Well, welcome back again. We're together again to talk about fishing. And again, tonight we're doing one of those seminars that makes you a better fisherman, but also kind of challenges the way you're doing things and kind of makes you think a little better and gets you more primed to become a fisherman instead of someone who goes fishing. Tonight we're going to talk about the 5 P's to catching more fish. Fairly quick seminar, but there's lots of neat things in here that you need to pay attention to and kind of understand how the whole process works of becoming a better angler. You know, like we talked about in our 8 Steps DVD, as I moved up the ladder and became a competitive fisherman, I started trying to talk to guys who were consistently catching fish, be it the good charter captains or be it tournament guys that were constantly taking my money. And again, one of the things that came through every time I talked to them was, you know, how are you always catching fish? It always came back to planning, making good decisions, having data, being able to analyze that data. So 20 years ago when we started Walleye 101, we needed a way to kind of teach all this and trying to put it together in a way that we can present to guys like you and get you to the point where you're catching more fish. So the 5 P's for catching more fish: pay attention, get your notebooks out. There's lots of really good information here to make you a better angler. So I started doing this seminar kind of thinking about, you know, we need to talk about this process of being a better angler, both off the water and on the water. How does it all work? So I started asking guys at seminars. I go, hey, you know, before you go fishing, what are you worried about? Give me the top 3 things you think about before you go fishing. And guys talked about, man, I got new lures. I like new lures, new colors. If it's new, no one else has got it. I got a chance to catch some fish. Fishing line became a big deal when fluorocarbon came out. Man, I really think that invisible fishing line makes a difference. Or I use a leader when I'm fishing Detroit River, or whatever the case may be. You know, invisible fishing line was a big deal. Fish scent, I get this all the time. You know, what do you think about fish scents? That's another subject for another day. My personal feeling in general, you'll never catch less fish with it, but fish aren't going to swim 15 feet to get your bait because it smells good. So if you believe it, okay. The newest electronics. Now, obviously, we preach good electronics, but you don't need to buy the latest and greatest every time, right? Upgrade your electronics every 4, 5, 6, 7 years. You've got good enough stuff. Just make sure you've got good electronics. Expensive rods and reels. You know, there are places that good rods make a difference, but most of the time, your equipment has nothing to do with how many fish you're catching. And this is my favorite. Private hideout. I got a spot I can't tell anybody about. I got a rock pile nobody knows about. I guarantee you, number 1, people know about it. Number 2, stop worrying about private spots. Because what happens when you go to your super duper secret hot spot and the fish aren't there, the fish aren't biting. Now you're kind of messed up and your mind's scattered. They aren't biting, or you got to figure out where the fish are. So all this stuff is what guys told me they liked to worry about. And I look at all that and go, you know what? None of that, absolutely none of that is important. So what should you worry about? What should you be thinking about before, during, and after your fishing day to help you catch more fish? Pretty simple. A systematic plan of fishing, a way to kind of plan your day, make a game plan, go on the water, do some things, see if they work or don't work, analyze that data, and then make changes. A systematic plan of fishing. Keeping what is important top priority. We'll talk about that in a second. Paying attention to detail. This is something that I see a lot on my charters. We'll catch 2 or 3 fish in a row, and I'll turn to my customer and go, okay, what do those 3 fish have in common? And they'll kind of look at me with a blank look and go, they're all walleye? No, we all caught them all on the outside turn. Pay attention to detail. Pay attention to what's going on. I am a true believer in this, keeping good, detailed fishing records, even if you have a bad day of fishing. I'll talk about records in detail a little bit later. And then when you make decisions on the water, make them on fact, not on feeling. You know, if you open the box and go, I don't know, Uncle Joe gave me this lure, and you put that on, you probably don't have the right lure on. Making decisions based on facts, not feeling. All those things together are going to make you a better fisherman. Our mantra at Walleye 101, we say this 1,000 times a week, it seems like, during seminar season. How do you catch more fish? You spend more time fishing properly where there are catchable fish. Cannot stress this enough, guys. You can't catch them where they aren't. And you're not just looking for fish, you're looking for catchable fish. Fish that want to bite, fish that are active and aggressive. If you do that, your chance of success is going to go way up. Fish that want to bite are easy to catch. Fish that don't want to bite are hard. I'm not a good enough fisherman to catch fish that don't want to bite. I've got to find catchable, or what we call stupid fish, then we can start catching them. So pay attention to this. You can catch some of this stuff in some of our other DVDs, but find catchable fish. You're going to catch a lot more. All right, so what are the 5 P's? Let's get into the meat of tonight. They are pretty simple. Preparation, planning, perception, pattern fishing, and then preserving the information. Now, those probably all would be better under a different name, but the 5 P's kind of, for whatever reason, rang a bell to me. So that's it. Preparation, planning, perception, pattern fishing, and then preserving the information you gather when you're on the water. Those are the 5 steps to catching more fish. Okay, so what is the preparation phase? And I would tell you that 99% of the anglers I talk to completely skip this. If you pull up to the boat ramp on Saturday, launch your boat, start your motor, head out to the lake, and look at your buddy and go, well, where we're going to go, you're done. You're defeated. You're not going to have as good a day as you have. A good Saturday fishing trip starts on Tuesday or Wednesday, right? There's this little thing called the internet. It's probably going to be around for a while, so you might want to learn how to use it, right? Lots of really, really good information out there. You need to start preparing your trip before you go. It's amazing to me how many guys on Friday night get on one of our Facebook pages and post, anybody catching any fish in Detroit River? And there's been 750 posts over the week of where guys are catching them and how they're doing. But nobody takes the time to pay attention. Preparation starts before you get on the water. Gather as much information as possible about a body of water, not just what's going on right now, but the whole body of water that you're going to be fishing. Good information is available. Where can you get it, right? Bait shops, websites, fishing articles, seminars like this, talking to other fishing guys, talking to people at the ramp. Get some information generally about the lake and then specifically about what's going on. One thing I'll absolutely right now tell you, always make sure you have good lake maps. I know we've got some fantastic mapping. The new C-Map stuff, the Navionics stuff, which is Sonar Chart Live. We've got Insight Genesis, or the C-Map Genesis, allows us to actually create a map and see bottom composition and weed growth. I get all that. But you can't see on a 12-inch screen in big area like you can on a map. So there's something about taking a paper map, holding it down or looking at it and going, aha, there's a major point. There's an inside corner. There's a steep drop off. You can't necessarily see that, especially big picture, on your machine. So having maps is important. And don't just have one map. This is one of the things that I learned tournament fishing. If there are 15 maps, maybe by 15 different companies for where you fish, buy all 15. Because every one of those is going to have something different. I fish the Great Lakes a lot, and I use those big roll-up nautical charts. Why? Because those were designed for ship traffic, for commercial traffic. There's things on those, especially little pieces of structure, tiny spots of little rises in the bottom that are close to the shipping channel that never show up on a fishing hotspots map that's made for fishing. Because the fishing hotspots map is a general fishing map, that navigation map is made for navigation. There are things on that map that don't show up on your fishing hotspots map. So if you've got 3 or 4 good map sources for your body of water, get all 4 or 5 of them and have them. You might not need to have them in the boat, but you definitely need them at home for your preparation, your planning before you get on the water. Other thing I would tell you, for example, like Fishing Hotspots has 3 maps for the Western Basin of Lake Erie. They have one that covers the Western Basin, basically from the Michigan shoreline over just past Lorain, Ohio, or Vermilion, Ohio. So it covers a lot of the Western Basin. Then they have one that just covers the islands, so the Bass Islands area, so you get more detail because you got the same size map, smaller area. Then they have another map that covers in detail all the major reefs out there at Port Clinton. So you want to have all those because you can see where the reefs are on your Western Basin map, but you can't get the 1-foot contours and all the little subtle details of that unless you have the reef map. So spend a little bit of money. Maps are cheap, 12, 15, 18 bucks at the most. If you've got 4 or 5, 6 maps for the area you're fishing, make sure you have them all. They're going to help you catch a lot more fish. All right, so what things do we need to learn about a lake? Let's say we want to get better this winter, so we're going to try to get some more information about a lake we fish, or we want to fish a new body of water we've never fished before. Maybe we're going on vacation. What do we need to learn about a lake? This is all stuff that I used to do when I used to travel the country tournament fishing. A couple things you need to know. What type of bait lives in the lake? If you saw our 8 steps to catching more fish, or you watched our bait fish DVD, you understand how important bait is. Fish are always going to be where the bait is. You have to know what kind of bait lives in your lake before you can make a decision on where the walleyes are going to be. Okay? So understand what kind of bait fish live in the lake. I like to go back to the last 2 or 3 DNR netting surveys. What's the game fish to bait fish ratio? I try to avoid, every year I try to fish at least 2 new lakes I've never fished before. I try to avoid bodies of water where the last netting survey or 2 shows a whole lot of bait fish per acre and not a lot of game fish. I'm going to have a tough time catching fish. Those fish have all the bait fish they need. I like to see situations where there's a lot of game fish per acre, not a lot of bait fish. That means there's a lot of fish. They're hungry. They're aggressive. A lot easier to catch them when they want to bite. So pay attention to that. What type of cover or weeds are in the lake? How deep does the weed growth grow, right? That's important. Weeds hold fish all year, guys. If you don't learn anything from anything that we do, learn that walleyes live in the weeds 365 days a year, especially in the heat of summer. So if you've got weed growth, good quality green weed growth in your lake, you're going to have weeds in there. Is there wood cover? Is there rocks? What's on the bottom? What is there to not necessarily hold fish, but draw and hold bait fish? How deep do the weeds grow? That's one of the questions that I ask right away when I go to a body of water for the first time is what depth do the weeds stop growing in summertime? Absolutely critical. A couple things happen with you have that number. You know where the deep weed edge is, so you know that you can probably follow that deep weed edge, find the biggest major point that sticks the furthest into deep water. Now, I'll guarantee you, if you find that, the deep weed edge on the longest point that sticks the furthest into deep water, you'll catch something 5 minutes after being on a lake. There's always fish on that part, that piece of structure in a lake. The biggest thing is fish, just like game animals or birds or anything that lives in nature, they love edges. And weeds stop growing at a certain depth because that's where the sunlight stops penetrating. So that's an absolute edge from light penetration to no light penetration. So if you know what depth that is at, that's going to be a key depth. Even as fish move off shallow water, and maybe they suspend over 30, 40 feet of water, that number of where the light penetration stops and the weeds stop growing is going to be a critical number when those fish suspend in open water. So it's an important thing to know. What kind of water clarity is in the lake? Does it vary? Is it the same? Is it tannic acid? Is there a little bit of color to it? Do we get a thermocline in the summertime? Remember, walleyes aren't going to penetrate the top edge of the thermocline very often. That helps us determine how good the lake is going to be in the summertime. And then if you want to really get into it, you do some research, you can ask around, you can go on the DNR websites, they have all this information in their netting surveys. What's the average and maximum size of fish I can expect to catch? Don't go to a lake where the maximum fish that was netted by the DNR the last 5 nettings is 21 inches and expect to catch a 10-pounder. Not going to happen, right? So kind of get some basic general ideas about your lake. If you want to become better, even on a lake that you know very well, if you know these things, you're going to be better at fishing that lake. All right, things to talk about daily. And remember, look at guys, we have not left the house yet. We're still sitting at home. We're still putting together a plan for Saturday. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday maybe. We're putting a plan together. We're not even on the water yet. We are planning our trip, getting ready to go. Right? So some things I kind of look at. What's the wind speed and the wind direction for the past few days? That's important. I can't tell you how many guys get on the water on a Saturday and go, where did all these waves come from? The wind forecast was 5 to 10 from the southwest, and there's 3-foot waves. Well, yeah, because it's been blowing 40 from the north for the last 5 days. Just because it's going to blow 10 from the southwest on the day you're fishing doesn't mean that that weather prior hasn't affected the water, the waves, and more importantly, fish location. So don't just look at wind location, get up in the morning and go, oh, it's going to be good. You need to know what's happened a couple days before. Water temps and water clarity. I like to get on the satellite overview on the NOAA website and see the overview, especially on the Great Lakes. What is the water clarity? Where's the green water been pushed? Where's all the dirty water? I want to avoid that. I may not launch it where I think I'm going to launch because that water is too dirty. We're 20 miles down the road. We got access to clean water. So I may adjust my day. Water temps in the spring and the fall. Where is the right water temp? Wave direction and height. Can I fish in my boat? Is it safe? Is it going to be comfortable? Is it coming from a direction that if I use a different ramp, I'm going to be sheltered? Pay attention to all that. This is a big detail one we're going to talk about a little later this year. We'll have a seminar out on dealing with surface and subsurface currents. Guys don't pay enough attention to current. It doesn't always go the same direction as the waves, especially subsurface currents. And it can affect how fast and what action your bait has 10, 12, 15 feet below the surface. There may be reasons you're not catching fish, and it may not be that the fish aren't there. It may be that the current is not letting your bait work because you're actually trolling down current, not going fast enough. So start paying attention to that. We'll show you here in just a second. There's ways to get all this information online sitting at home. And then again, like I said earlier, look at wind, waves, weather, and currents, not simply as what's going to be happening the day I fish, but what has happened in days previous to when I'm going to go fishing, and how is that going to actually affect what's happening the day I go. I have a simple statement about wind, waves, weather, any of that stuff. The longer it is the same, the better fishing is going to be. I like consistent weather. Fish like consistent weather. I don't care if it's cold, windy, nasty, and crappy. If it's been cold, windy, nasty, and crappy for 3 days, the fish are biting. Fishing's going to be good. What fish don't like is a change from one to another. Even if it's from bad, what we would perceive as bad weather to good weather, fishing's going to be off. Fish don't like the change. The further you are from that change, the better the fishing's going to be. Or the longer the stability's been there, the better the fishing's going to be. So don't just look at the weather based on what it's going to be when you go fishing. Look at how the day you go fishing's weather actually compares to what it has been the last 3 or 4 days. And again, we're going to show you how to get online and get all that data. Again, we haven't left yet. We're still at home. Wife's watching Dancing with the Stars. We're actually planning to have a better fishing trip. Okay? So here's our website, walleye101.com/plans_a_trip. That takes you to a web page where you can get all this information. We've got the wind and wave forecast. That is the NOAA marine forecast you're familiar with. Buoy data. If you want to know what the height of the waves and the speed of the wind and the direction of the wind has been for 4, 5, 6 days, you can click on this buoy data, find a buoy in the Great Lakes, and you can go back up to 48 hours and actually look at the records and actually see when the wind changed and where it's been blowing. I use that all the time when I'm fishing. There's a link to the satellite image, gives you the overview and actually shows you the water clarity. Water temperature is an overview of the water temp. There's some webcams on the Great Lakes if you want to see what the wind is really doing. And then my favorite site is probably this Great Lakes Coastal Forecasting. This allows you to see the weather on all the Great Lakes, wind, wave, height, wave direction, surface current, subsurface current, 7 different parameters. And you can see them now. You can go back 4 days, and you can actually watch a forecast 4 days. So you can get 8 days of data before your trip and actually see what's going to happen during your trip. Actually get that on here and actually make a good plan and have better decision making before you go. And then we've got we'll talk about this later, this is our fish catching tracking sheet, so you can actually record the fish that you catch. All that's on our page. Go to walleye101.com, click on the Plan a Trip radio button right here. You're going to go right to this page, and you're going to be able to get all this. We do a seminar on how to use all this data and how to put it all together when you're planning a trip that you can pick up from us too. So, but just know that page is there. It's a great page to use for resources. Okay, so we're starting to plan. We're starting to put together our preparation. Another thing I like to do if I'm going to a lake I've never been to is I like to call a couple people that fish it, be it a guide or a local bait shop, and I like to ask some questions, but I like to ask the right questions. And here's the questions I want to know, okay? Let's say I'm going to go out fishing Saturday to a lake I've never been to. I've done some preparation, and now I'm going to call the bait shop on, let's say, Wednesday, right? A couple of things about bait shops. Don't call first thing in the morning. They're usually pretty busy. Don't call on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday morning specifically. Kind of call middle of the week, middle of the morning. Most bait shops aren't that busy. It's only going to take 2 minutes, okay? But you need to ask the right questions. Ask the person you talk to, what part of the lake are the fish biting in? And that can be as simple as they're in Hoochie Hoochie Bay, or the northeast corner is really good, or they're catching them off of Linwood, whatever the case may be. But that lets you take a big piece of the body of water and start to narrow it down to a fishable chunk. So what part of the lake? The next thing I like to know is how deep of water. You know what? They're in Hoochie Hoochie Bay, and most of the fish are coming out of 20 to 22 feet of water. Well, I've just taken a big lake and made it a very, very small piece of water, right? 20 to 22 feet of water in Hoochie Hoochie Bay is not a lot of water. So I've actually started to take this, where do I fish, to, okay, here's where I need to concentrate my time. Then I want to know how deep are the fish. And this is the key. These 3 things right here, guys, should dial you in to be on fish fairly quickly when you get on the water. If your fish are coming out, let's say they're coming out 20, 22 feet of water, and the guy says they're right on the bottom, that tells you fish aren't very aggressive. You're going to have to fish vertical presentations, maybe bottom bouncers, maybe do a little bit of jigging, whatever the case may be. Fish probably aren't going to be moving a lot. You're going to have to find these peak times when they bite. They're in 22 feet of water, and they're 12 feet down. That's what we want to hear, right? Now we've got catchable, aggressive fish that are up. They're chasing bait. They're active and aggressive. We're going to be able to see them very easily on sonar. And we know that we aren't going to need to fish vertically. We can fish fast. We can fish horizontally, spoons, crankbaits, crawler harnesses pulled fairly quickly, right? So just those 3 questions. What part of the lake shrinks it down to a fishable piece? How deep of water and how deep are the fish gives you all the information you need to start putting together a good fishing plan, okay? Don't need to ask a lot of questions, right? Where are they at? What's the waypoints? Just basic questions. And then if you got a few extra minutes, ask the guy at the bait shop, hey, you got a couple minutes to talk? I want to know what size fish most of the guys are catching, how many fish a day, and then ask them what the best presentation is. I guarantee you, if you've done any homework at all, you get these 3 answers, you should know this answer. That should automatically come to you and go, okay, that's what I expected. Okay? What size of the fish, how many? You know, hey, sometimes you go on vacation and all they're doing is they're catching 35, 16 inches every day. That's okay. Just don't expect to catch a giant. Understand what's going on. Get your preparation right so you can get your planning right and understand what you're going to catch. Okay? So that's step 1. That's preparation. Now, once we have all that, we're going to go into step 2, which is the planning part. And we're going to use all the information we got in step 1, and we're going to start to eliminate water and get a good idea of possible good areas and possible presentations, right? So we can instantly take our map, okay, 20 to 22 feet in Hoochie Hoochie Bay, and we can basically, boom, go, okay, here's where they're catching fish, okay? And that's a small area compared to that big giant map you have, right? So now you know where you're going to launch, right? Maybe where you want to stay if it's a big body of water. Where am I going to, you know, where do I want to dock the boat? Where do I want to stay at a hotel? I don't want to drive all the way around the lake if I don't have to. And then what we do, once we get that, we start to use the bait fish that are in the lake and say, okay, fish are here. This is what they're doing. They're at a certain depth, certain part of the lake. Water temperature's X. They're a certain depth. That means they're probably feeding on what type of bait fish. Or what kind of bait fish are in the lake? Where should the fish be in smaller pieces on this little piece of this big lake? So we're starting to use all of our thinking to kind of get an idea together, right? Where should fish be during the year? The time of year you're going to be there based on the bait fish and based on the information you got in step 1. Here's another piece to this. We're going to talk later about preserving data. If you've been to the lake before, guys, you should have records that say, under these conditions, the fish are here, and this is what I caught them on. Having that previous data really makes the planning part very, very easy. So we're going to talk about that. Not only are you trying to record what you're doing today, but man, oh man, having that data to go back on and look and say, I fished this lake under these conditions before, I guarantee you the fish are going to be in the same place doing the same darn thing. Keep good records, okay? So that's the planning part, taking all the information that we had in step 2. So let's say this is Lake Erie. I call it, but you know what? They're hitting down by the Huron River. Well, so I've taken this is a small piece of giant Lake Erie, and now out of Huron, I have eliminated all but this little piece right here. So now I've got a fishable piece of water, right? You know what? The fish are between 35 and 40 feet deep. Okay? Well, guess what? That's all I need to fish. There's my spot right there. So how big is Lake Erie? Right? And we were looking at a very, very small piece of Lake Erie, but just by those 2 questions, off of Huron, 35 to 40 feet of water, I've eliminated everything except this part of the water. Now I've got a body of water that's not much bigger than an inland lake. Now I can fish it and really start paying attention to what's happening. So by asking a few questions and getting some preparation and planning done before I hit the lake on Saturday, I'm way ahead of the guy who comes down Saturday and says, where do we go? Okay? Most good fishing trips happen before you even hook the boat up to the trailer. I'm convinced of that. All right? Okay, so now we're done. We've got our preparation. We learned about the lake. We've made a few phone calls. We've taken all that information. We've made a plan. We got an idea what's going to happen. Now starts what I call the perception piece of it. And I truly believe, this is the first step of perception, and I truly believe that this is a lost art among anglers today. Yes, the internet's fantastic. Yes, being able to text somebody is great. Yes, Facebook fishing groups are awesome. We have lost the art of walking into a tackle shop and getting, right now, information about what's going on in the lake. Don't lose that skill. Unless I know for a fact what's going on, I always, especially on a body where I don't fish a lot, or I'm there for the first time, or I'm there the first time in 3 or 4 years, I always stop at the best local bait shop and I ask them those questions again. What part of the lake? How deep water? How deep are their fish? Okay? I stop in and I say hi. Okay? That's important. Real quick, best local bait shop. Sometimes the best bait shop for the area you're fishing is not on the lake. Okay? So, what do I consider a good bait shop? I look for bait shops that, number one, have at least 1 or 2 guides running out of them. If the guides go there, they're getting good information. Okay? Second thing, the biggest thing for me, when I call up, and I'd say I got 3 or 4 bait shops in an area, the biggest thing for me, I ask 2 questions. Do you sell leeches by the pound? Do you sell crawlers by the flat? I may not use live bait that trip, but I know if a bait shop is selling leeches by the pound, half pound or pound, and they carry flats or crawlers, I know that's a good bait shop. That's where the fishermen are going. Guys aren't going where the guy sells a container of 12, little worms, or you got buy leeches in a cup of 6. The good fishermen aren't going there. The good fishermen are going where they can get the best bait. So ask, do you sell leeches by the pound, crawlers by the flat? Yep, that's probably the best bait shop. That's probably where the guides are going and the really good fishermen in the area are going. That's where the best information is going to be. If you walk into a store, and this is still common today, I still spend a lot of time in small bait shops, they're going to have a little mimeographed map on the counter. That's going to say, Joe's Bait Shop, Lake Hoochie Hoochie. You know what you do? You give Joe $2 for that old crappy map, because usually what happens is that map is something that Joe's grandson or granddaughter makes copies of, and they get the money for it. Buy something. Buy something. Buy something. Buy something. Be nice. Pick up a candy bar. Pick up some pop. Don't need to buy fishing tackle. Just buy something. Tell the guy, hey, thank you for being here. I'm going to support your store. I just spent $5, $6, $8, $10. If he tells you, hey, here's what the fish are biting on, maybe buy 1 or 2, even if you have them in your boat already. Because these guys are the heart and soul of fishing information, and I personally believe they're the heart and soul of the fishing business. They need to stay in business. So buying something you already have from this guy, number one, going to free up his mouth a little bit to give you information. Number two, going to make him understand that you want to support him. He's going to help you catch more fish. This is a lost art nowadays. Used to be the only way we get information. It's a lost art. Be the good fisherman who stops. And when you, at the end of the day, if you do catch fish, regardless of the information he gave you or not, stop by and say, hey, just want to tell you, we just went out today. We caught a bunch of fish. Here's where we caught them. Here's what we were doing. Pass on what you've learned so other people can have a good fishing day. Okay, we're finally on the lake. We finally got the boat in the water. Away we go. First thing I do when I get on the lake, especially if it's a lake I haven't been on in a while or a new lake I'm fishing, first thing I do is I put the boat on plane and I go looking. What's the water temp? I start looking for weed growth. Where does the weed growth stop? I verify all of that stuff. I go out in deeper water. Is there a thermocline? Yep. Nope. Where is it? How deep is it? I look at the water clarity. What's the wind direction, the wind speed? What is all that? Before I even unlock my rod locker, I go out and find all of this stuff. So now I know what I prepared for. I know what I planned for. Now I'm just verifying. So if this is true for what I got in step 1 and 2, I can go on with my plan. If it's different, I got to kind of make adjustments. But I know for a fact now what it is. I can go out and I can make observations on this, and I can start to make my plan tighter. Make adjustments to your original plan based on the perception of the current conditions. Finalize the daily game plan. Rods aren't out of the rod locker yet, guys. Okay, here's what we know. Here's the map. Here's what we thought. Here's what we know today. Here's what we just found out the bait shop. Here's what everything's telling us. Is this a good plan? Yep, let's go. Bad plan? Yeah, let's make a couple changes. Then you go fishing. That half hour, guys, I can't stress it enough. Don't be in such a hurry to get lures in the water. A lure in the water where there's no fish to see it is useless. It's a waste of time. Do all this, get on fish first, then you're going to start to catch them faster and catch more fish every day. And I cannot stress this enough, guys, the perception piece. Pay attention to your electronics. I can't tell you how many times I've been running wide open across the lake and come across something like this. This is a big school of walleyes in deep water, found at 52 miles an hour. If you can't read your sonar at any speed, check out our sonar interpretation DVD. If you can't read your sonar at high speeds, guys, you need to get your transducer dialed in and get it on correctly so you can read fish at high speeds. I can't tell you how many times I'm going from point A to point B. I never get there because this happens. So being able to see at 20, 30, 40 miles an hour what's underneath your boat is critical to covering a lot of water and getting on fish fast. I'll make it simple for you. If you installed your transducer on your boat and haven't moved it since the first time you did it, it's wrong. If your boat dealer installed your transducer on your boat and you haven't moved it since the first time you put it on, it's wrong. You have to get on the water and do that. We cover that in our sonar interpretation DVD, how to get your transducer dialed in. But this is a huge part of the perception. Looking for bait and looking for fish at 20, 25, 30 miles an hour, I can cover a ton of water. Okay? So we're kind of three pieces here of this perception. I'm on the water for the first time, doing a little bit of looking, verifying all of my details, right? Where are the fish? What's the water temp? What's the water depth? What's the weed depth? Verifying all that, step one. Step two is I'm moving around the lake looking for fish, looking for bait. That's step two of the perception part. And then the third piece of the perception part starts to happen when you start to catch fish, paying attention to details. So what's happening when you're catching fish? Are you turning? How fast were you going? Is that lure that the fish you just caught, when you turned, did it hit a lure on the outside, so it's going faster, or on the inside, it's going slower? Is it the lure that's 20 feet from the boat that consistently gets hit, or 100 feet from the boat that consistently is getting bit? What's happening? How deep of water are you when you catch a fish? How deep is your lure when you get a bite? Do you have a bunch of lures? You've caught 3 fish at a lure 15 feet down in the water column? That's time to take those lures that are 17, 18, 20 feet and move them up because they're too deep. Start paying attention to what's happening. Is the water color, the clarity change? What color am I in? What's the clarity when I'm catching fish? Oh, we just stopped catching fish. Oh, the water just got dirtier. Well, we need to go back to where the water clarity and color is right. Which direction am I trolling? I catch fish going that way, but can't catch them coming right back through it. Well, there's something about your trolling direction. Could be subsurface current, could be surface current, could be the way the fish are moving. Okay? But pay attention to, I catch a fish, I'm heading that way. Compass heading, I catch another one, catch a third one. What is starting to happen, right? Any changes in the wind, weather, or current. Man, we were catching them, the wind died, bite stopped. Okay, well, now it's time to reevaluate your plan and figure out what's going to happen now that the wind has died. And then lastly, as these things are happening, as they're not 4 hours later when you get home, but as they're happening, guys, write it down. So as you start to gather data, you catch 3 or 4 or 5 fish, you can go, man, all those fish came on baits between 12 and 15 feet deep. You just figured out how deep your baits need to be. And all those fish came on an outside turn. You need to go faster or keep turning. All right, all these things start to happen. Well, we caught 5 fish. They all came on a different color. That tells you haven't figured out the right color yet. If you write it down, you can see it. So pay attention to all these things as you're catching fish. If you've watched our 8 Steps to Catching More Fish DVD, when we get into the part number 4, the 4th P, pattern fishing, this is where our 8 steps really become important. If you haven't seen our 8 Steps to Catching More Fish DVD, get it. Stop this one right now, watch that one, and then come back and watch this one again. So the 8 steps in order of importance are location, depth of water, how deep are the fish, so how deep is my lure speed, size, shape, action, and color. I'm not going to cover this because we've covered it in another DVD, but understand that everything above the line is where, everything below the line is what. Make it really simple. I'm going to kind of sum this up real quick. If you get all 3 of these items above the line right, you can do all of this wrong and still catch fish. If you get all of this right, but miss one of these above the line, you'll catch nothing. That's how important these 8 steps are. So pay attention to these 8 steps, because every time you catch a fish, you have answered all 8 of those questions. You're in the right location. You're in the right depth of water. You know about where the fish were. You should know exactly how deep your lure is. You know how fast you were going, and you know the size, shape, action, color of your bait. You've answered all 8 of those questions correctly every time you catch a fish. Write it down. And what will happen after 3 or 4 fish is they'll all be at a certain speed, and they'll all be at a certain depth, but they'll all be on different color. That tells you you've got the speed and the depth right. You don't have the color right. Or you don't have the size right, or you don't have the shape right. Maybe they came on 3 different styles of bait. Well, you got to work harder. So as you start to get multiple fish with the same answer to a specific question, that means you've got that piece figured out. If it's a different answer for every fish in one of these 8 things, you have to start working harder on getting that pattern tighter. This is the spot where guys just don't work hard enough. They just don't work hard enough. Well, we caught 10 on a good day. Well, no, because you really could have caught 30. Or maybe you could have caught some bigger fish, right? Or maybe a little change would have caught something else. Whatever the case may be, don't settle. And we're going to talk about that in our pattern fishing DVD. We talk about don't settle and the different options you need to go through. But pay attention. Every time you catch a fish, you answer these 8 questions probably. Why would you not want to know that? Number 1, for the day. Number 2, why would you not want to keep it and be able to go back a month later when the conditions are the same and know what you did? Okay, so that's all part of this 5 Ps. All right, so again, what's happening when you catch fish, speed, all that stuff we just talked about, all that goes into these 8 questions and answers those 8 questions for you. Okay? All right, last P is the preservation of data. And this is where, if you think guys are bad on planning, they're really bad on this. Keep good records of everything that happens during the day, good or bad. We have a Facebook page called the Walleye 101 Educational Forum. What we do is it's open to anybody, and guys share fishing information. We're trying to get guys to post fishing reports. And guys will when they catch fish. What happens is guys won't catch any fish. They don't post a report. And I get on them day after day, after month, after month, after year. Look if you go fishing to the Detroit River and you fish a certain part of the river and you fish for 9 hours and catch nothing, I want to know that because I don't want to go there tomorrow and spend my 9 hours and not catch anything. The same way if I go and don't catch anything on Saginaw Bay, trolling crankbaits in 15 feet of water, and you're going the next day and going to do the same thing, you would like to know that I didn't catch anything so you don't go fishing where the fishing's no good. Keeping track of what happens good days is awesome. Keeping track of what happens on bad days and what doesn't work is just as important, if not more important some days, guys. Don't be embarrassed to say, here's where I went, here's what I did, it didn't work. I would hope 2 things. Number 1, you'd be willing to share that data with your fishing buddies so they don't go do the same thing. Number 2, I would hope if you record the bad things, the next time the conditions are exactly the same, you don't go back and do the same stuff that didn't catch fish last time. You've just eliminated places and lure options that didn't work under those conditions. Keep good records. Write down everything that happens, good or bad. You're going to become a better fisherman. Record weather, wind, water conditions, and anytime it changes. What I do is I carry these fish record sheets in my boat. I carry them in my boat. And what I do, if the weather changes enough that one of these surface temperature, water color, water clarity, waves, wind direction, wind velocity, sky, air temperature, if any of that changes enough, I go, man, that's different. I start a whole new sheet. Because it's a whole new day of fishing. If you go out and it's overcast and raining, at 10 o'clock, all of a sudden the clouds break up and the sun's shining, that's a whole different day of fishing. That data under the morning, rainy, cloudy weather conditions isn't good data. So I start a new sheet anytime the weather changes enough to tell me there's something that's different. That's important. Record the 8 pieces of the pattern for every fish. Again, there's the 8 pieces. Location, depth of water, depth of the fish, depth of lure, lure speed, size, shape, action, color. Record that for every piece. And then what I do, guys, I'm a huge planner. I have a file cabinet in my house dedicated to nothing but fishing information. And I keep file folders on every lake that I've ever fished, ever want to fish, or ever may fish. And what I do is I keep that. So what goes in that file folder? I keep all my lake maps in there. I keep contact information. Maybe I know a guide. Maybe I know a bait shop. Maybe I found a good place to launch, a good hotel. All that goes in my file folder. All my fishing reports. So what I do, every couple days or every couple weeks, depending on how busy I am, I take these sheets and I turn them into these types of sheets. So here's a date, where I was fishing, what kind of waypoint, what the waypoint looked like that I used that day, the basic weather information, surface temperature, water color, water clarity, wind, waves, all that stuff kind of each day. And I put in all the waypoints and what I caught all those fish on. So I can go back. I got stacks of this data, literally, guys, stacks of this data. I can go back and I can look at data from 10, 12, 15, 20, sometimes 40 years ago. Right? I started keeping records when I was a 7-year-old kid on the Asabo River. My grandpa taught me. And I've done it almost every day since. That's a lot of fish. It's a lot of data. Why would you not want to do that, right? So when someone calls you up and goes, hey, I'm going to Lake Erie in November, going down this weekend, water temperature is 52, 53 degrees, going to have about southwest wind, where should I fish? Give me a half hour. I can go back to all my records and go, well, I would tell you that you might want to be somewhere in the high 24s, low 25s on the north, and somewhere in the 28s on the west. And make sure your baits are down, 60 to 80 feet back. May have happened 10 years ago, but the weather conditions are the same. I guarantee you the fish will be in the same place, eating the same thing 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now. That's why I'm so adamant about keeping information. It has been a huge part of my fishing success. And I keep all that in a file folder. So when I go to Lake Erie, I grab my Lake Erie file folder. I got everything in there. I go to Houghton Lake, I grab my Houghton Lake file. Everything is there. I don't have to worry about, is the Houghton Lake map in the boat? Is it not in the boat? Is it in the car? Where is it? Where's my records? Who's that guy? Who's that guy I want to talk to at Houghton Lake? Where's the best bait shop? Who's the guy I got the leeches from? It's all in a file folder. I pick it up and away I go. Okay? Nowadays, with the smartphones we have and the Lowrance units now, guys, are also PDF readers. So you could take all that information, make one PDF out of it, save it on an SD card, download it to your phone, and put the SD card in your Lowrance machine, download it to the internal memory on your machine, and actually have it in your Lowrance unit, so you don't need to carry those file folders anymore, because we can keep that data other places with all the devices we have. So, but keep that data, guys. Keep it. Go back and look at it. All right? So preservation of data is important. So let's wrap this up. 5 P's. Preparation happens off the water before the trip. The first step of planning happens off the water. Perception happens when we get on the water to figure out if our preparation, our planning are right, the information we got. Perception happens first thing on the water. Then it happens while we're catching fish, perception. It also happens while we're looking for fish. Once we start to catch fish, we get into pattern fishing mode. Those 8 steps, writing them down, make sure we have good data so we can make good decisions based on what's happening. And at the end of the day, preserving that information so we have a way to go back and look at it later and say, what did we miss? Why did we not catch them? And be able to have that data preserved so you can go back later and figure out, hey, I was on this body of water before, we caught fish, what were we doing? All that's important. The 5 P's to catching more fish, guys, I promise you, not a sexy seminar, not exciting. I guarantee you the guys who are the best fishermen that you know on the body of water, they're doing this. They may not do it all in detail and spend all the time, but they're doing it. They're doing it. I guarantee you they're doing it, and they're getting better results because they're better prepared when they're on the water. Hey, thanks for coming out tonight. I know it's wasn't a sexy seminar, but I appreciate you guys coming out. It's just something you need to really concentrate on to become better fishermen. Appreciate all your support over the years. Have a great fishing season if I don't see you.